Hey, 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 it's 5:30. Thank you for joining me. This is Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa, and I am Dr. Lisa, your host. And I appreciate all of you for reaching out to me over the past week. It's been overwhelming. So many stories. I'm so happy. So, a lot of you have a lot to say. And I am going to first write down some of the things that you've said to me, and then I will put them in the next blog, which should be on Friday. So many of you have so many gifts that you want to tell me about. Some of them I am aware of, and some of them I am not. So you're also teaching me. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. If some of you have stories that you want me to share anonymously, on my blog or on my podcast, make sure you join me live on my podcast. I'm also live on Instagram right now at Kids Can See Ghosts. Can you? I am also on most social media platforms, Twitter and all that good stuff. And you can also reach me at 765-205-1959, or you can email me at kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. Let's get to it. Let's talk about blog 37, which I titled Church Ghosts. The reason that I titled this one Church Ghosts is because at the time when I was watching a movie, I started to think about a couple of things in the movie that reminded me of the kids, some of the nebulous kids that I've worked with. And so one of the movies that I really like to watch, I don't care when it comes on, is Ghost with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg. It's one of my favorite movies for a lot of different reasons. But when I watched this back in November, I started to think about some of the scenes a little bit deeper than I typically have. And it's probably because I'm sitting here talking about, nebulous children and what they can do, as far as, seeing ghosts, but also some of the things that they have told me, including some of the kids that I've recently met, have told me some of the things that, they can do or they can see that other people can't. And so when I started watching the movie, I had a couple of giggles, but also I smiled quite a bit, um, because there were so many things in that movie, or there is so many things in that movie that reminds me of the kids. So when I hear them, it triggers something in me to start kind of giggling. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that before. But there was a part of the movie that always, I noticed a pattern that it'll always give me a bit of pause. And that's when remember, nebulous kids call demons dark angels. So when the dark angels come and they take away, the characters in the movie that have been quote unquote evil or bad. So if you haven't seen Ghost, go ahead and watch it. If you have, you know what I'm talking about when they take away the person that has inflicted, negative wounds or bad things. And so, and then, Patrick Swayze's character doing the right thing, at the end, he glowed white. I don't want to give it away for you if you haven't watched it. So when the demons or the dark angels would take away, or when they took away, no, it was twice. When they took away the characters that were doing wrong, there's certain noises, the way that it looked, the the whole depiction of that dark angel just reminded me so much of stories that I heard from nebulous children and their parents about what dark entities look like. It also made me think, there's just some connection that people have when they write these different movies and stories to the ability to see ghosts. Now, for me, just to give you a mental note, remember, I can't see ghosts, but I've heard enough ghost stories to say what I'm going to say to you, which is there is something to movie writing and what these kids can see. Because a lot of what these kids describe are actually written in movies. So, for example, when these dark angels take people away, and the way that Patrick Swayze's character looks when he is taken away to heaven, it just reminds me, for example, of how Nebula's children say angels appear, even around the angels around me. Most recently, a child told me that the angels were very white. They glow white. They're clear. They're very beautiful that are around me. And so you see how I kind of tie in what I hear, or I was able to with the movie Ghost. And so when you think about that movie, it's loosely based on religion. And remember, I talk about quite a bit about how one of the ways that I'm able to help the kids, and actually, this just happened to me. I'm going to write it up on Friday in more detail, where religion came into play, or talking about how to control things within the environment that are scary and dark to a child. One of the ways that I did that, as you guys know already, if you follow the blog, was teaching them, how to pray, or, what to do in a situation to bring light, or, salvation, or depending on what you believe, and also safety, to these kids. And so when I watched the movie Ghost and I watched Patrick Swayze's character light up in the end and go up to a place where there were people waiting, or spirits waiting on him. I said to myself, that's pretty much what I've heard from kids. Um, and it looks very real, you know. And to these kids it looks very real. So what I say very real, I mean that the depiction of it in the movie looked very real. And so as the movie was going off, I started thinking about these things, and I started thinking about, different stories that I heard. And so I have to tell you, one day, let's see, how do I explain it in the blog? Okay. One day I went to church, excuse me, and I came back and I had talked to, I believe it was Child B's mother. And her mother had said to me, I know you went to church yesterday, blah, 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 blah. Yep, I did. And we got to talking, and I don't remember all the details or how we got on the topic, but I will tell you that one of the things she shared with me is that when you are in church, if you look up at the lights, she said there are angels hanging from the lights in the ceiling. And I said, how do you know? She said, because I can see it and they tell me, your angels are telling me. And I'm like, really? And she said, yeah. And as the pastor preaches his sermon, there's a dark angel that sits right in front of his podium. And I said, so you mean to tell me, and I remember this part, dark angels actually come into the church. And she said, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They come into the church. They know God better than we do. She said, remember, Satan is a fallen angel. So they're very aware of God's word, and they do come into the church. But remember, they come into the church and they cause problems. So, they're sitting there listening to him. And that happens she said it happens in my church too, where, dark angels are, sitting in the pulpit, or, standing next to the pastor's chair and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what are they doing? They said, listening to the sermon. She said, listening to the sermon and watching him as he sits in his chair, as he preaches. They just sit there and watch, just like the angels. So when there are angels there are also dark angels. And I was like, wow, wow. And so, of course, that led me to ask all kinds of questions. I mean, a part of psychology is that you get really good at interviewing. And so I asked a bunch of questions. And so, I asked her stuff like, how do you know? And she said, I just know because they tell me, just like they're standing behind you now telling me that they go to church with you. She said, and I don't think I wrote this in the blog, but she said the one angel that follows me everywhere. There are two, I guess, or more, but one in particular that I talk about that stays, right on my side, next to me, like on my back. She says she goes to church with you. And I remember her telling me, she's nodding at the fact that she goes to church with you, but also that there are dark angels in the church watching. So this angel actually goes to church with me. And so I asked, why does she need to go to church with me? I'm in the Lord's house. So what does she need to come with me for? Well, obviously, sidebar, angels like the church. They hear the word of God. They hear, all of the songs and whatnot. But then you still need protection because there are still dark angels in there. And I was blown away. I still remember the time of day when I had that conversation. I still remember what it looked like outside. I still remember where we were when she talked to me about that. It was a really good conversation. And this is a mom who loved to talk to me and tell me stuff that she knew, about the paranormal world. All right, so what happened to me after that? Silly girl. When I would sit in church, I would pay attention to some of the stuff that she told me. So I would look at the lights and I would watch them sway, and I'd be thinking, oh God, there are angels there. Okay, no, that's the air conditioner blowing the lights. You know what I mean? So I would go back and forth, and then I would go, there's a dark angel sitting at the pulpit. I don't see it. Of course, I don't see it because I don't see ghosts. But I was like, well, that's what she said. So the funny thing is, I went and told my husband this story. And so when we when we would go to church, he would go, if I was looking at the lights, he would go, there's nothing up there. Stop looking at the lights. And I'm like, well, she said it was something up there. It's supposed to be angels up there. And he said, you guys are so silly. And he was just laughing. I would go, what if the swaying lights? Can you see the swaying lights? And he goes, yeah. Then he goes, no, I can't see the swaying lights. So he would play, and I would go, am I the only one that sees the swaying lights? Am I starting to see ghosts? I got a little bit paranoid and, silly over it. But, it was an interesting conversation. And it was so interesting to me that I actually had a consultation with my pastor about it. A good conversation. We must have talked no less than 2 hours about this. So I shared with him that I knew about the paranormal activity that was happening as he preached his sermon. I told him that I worked with children who could see ghosts. Just coincidentally, I didn't count on seeing kids like this, just like I don't now, and it's happening again now. And so I said, I know you probably don't believe me. I haven't had anyone just think that I was just lying about it, because I'm not. But I said, if this is not, stuff that truly happens to these kids, or there's no such thing as a paranormal, then tell me, because if you think from a biblical perspective that all of this is demonic, and I need to take a different route with working with the kids, just let me know. And I love my pastor. To this day, I love him, but he's no longer my pastor. He did the exact opposite of what I thought he was going to do. He said, oh, no, I believe you. And I was so shocked. He said, oh, no, I believe you. He said, I believe everything you tell me. You've been ordained to work with these kids. Why, we don't know. But I'm not surprised. And so what he did was he started talking about the spiritual realm with me. And he was saying that, there is a spiritual realm. It's all throughout the Bible. And there are people who won't believe it. But if the kids are telling you, more than likely it is something that they can see. Because remember, I was still in my quest of really trying to understand and develop strategies and figure this out. You know, you can figure out depression, you can figure out anxiety, you can figure out ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder. It's a lot of research on that stuff. And granted, there are things done to try to catch paranormal activity. And there are scientists who try to study it, but it's really hard. And it's not something that we can all believe in. I mean, not believe in, we can all do, right? Just like these kids and parents. But I had enough kids at that point to say, you know, there's a connection here with all of these kids. And so I will always remember this conversation because this is the conversation that probably taught me the most and that I had a couple of aha moments with, like, oh, okay, that's why. Oh, this is outside of the Bible. He understands this outside of the Bible. Oh, this is relatable. Okay, wait a minute. What did he say? He can relate to this. Whoa. So he said, yeah, when my adult child was a little child, and I think a teenager too, so throughout his life, one day he told my pastor there were angels lined up in front of his pulpit. And I was kind of like, what do you mean lined up? He said, lined up in front of me, in front of the pulpit. So in a single line across the pulpit. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And he said, and it matches what your client's mother told you, that they are there. You know, they might be in the light, but my child saw them lined up in front of me. And he said, I'm not surprised that there are dark angels in the church that are seen by individuals that can see ghosts. And there have been several people, parishioners, I think that's what they're called, in his congregation, in the congregation, who said that they can see ghosts to him and at church when he's preaching. And I was like, whoa, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, so you believe me when I tell you that this is a parent that told me because I can't see ghosts? And he said, absolutely. Absolutely. So from that conversation, I went back to the nebulous parent. Again, I believe it was Child B's mother. And I told her, at the end of once therapy was over and stuff like that, what the pastor said to me. And she said, oh, do you believe me now? And I was like, well, I believed you. I mean, I just couldn't understand why dark angels were coming to a church, but now I know. I thought they would be scared of anything Jesus Christ. She said, absolutely not. Mm-mm. Nope. Nope. They're not afraid of Jesus. They just don't like us, humans. And I said, whoa. So I remember that because that was the same day she talked to me about different dark angels that were actually across the street from me. So it gets pretty deep. It gets pretty deep. And so it wasn't as if I didn't believe her. I always believe my clients. But to me, a pastor has a direct connection with God. Now, that sounds silly because if you do believe in God, we all have a direct connection to Him through prayer. But if you hear the word of God and you're ordained by Him to preach the sermon, in my mind, I'm like, you have to know more than this, or you have to know, that you're a little more connected than I am. So who better to talk to than the pastor about the spiritual realm? I need a deeper connection. I'm searching for something because I don't know what to do to help the kids, but also I need to learn more so that I can help them. And I needed to relate to them more because sometimes when they would tell me these things, it would be unbelievable, right? So you get that. So I felt like when he could relate based upon his own kids, he was telling me, I have a nebulous child. And I thought, now I just feel so much better. And he said, it's truly a gift for these children to be able to see ghosts, and some adults too, because remember I said he has people tell him that they have the same gift to see ghosts, right, in his congregation. And so at the end of the conversation, he actually smiled at me and he said, I know there are dark angels in the pulpit. I know they're there. And they stay. I know they do. And I thought, man, this is just deep, you know, especially because when I went back to Child B's mother, she knew all this stuff about the church. She also knew a lot of other things. For example, she said, when you go home and you pull in the driveway, look behind you across the street. There's a big window behind you. And then she got quiet. And then she said, your angel just said there's a dark angel that stares at you from the window across the house when you go into the driveway and it doesn't like you. I said, how do you know there's a window from a door? So this house had a front door. Then it also had a garage door that faced my house, if you can picture that. And she said it's sitting there looking at you when you pull in the driveway every day, and it's a dark angel. And so, of course, when I would go home at that point, I would look back like, there's a dark angel watching me. And what does that mean? And she would always say that they're always around us. So when I talked to the pastor, he confirmed that. You know, he said that, you know, not only have children and parents told him that there are ghosts, you know, in there, angels with us when we're listening to the sermon, but there are dark angels as well in there. And so actually, if you get to the point in this blog, this is blog number 37, you shouldn't be as surprised to hear that. But still, when I talk about it, when I go back and think about these things, because these are real experiences for me, it's still kind of amazing to this day that I actually meet nebulous children. Now, one of the things that this pastor did for me too, and I know I didn't write this in the blog because I rarely talk about it. I may have talked about it on a podcast, but I don't remember. But this was a pastor who also had a doctorate degree. And this is one who really wanted to educate me because this was a period in my career where I continuously saw these kids. And so one of the things he wanted me to do was to read some books. And he gave me the books. He actually sent them to me, to my house. And he said to me, if you're going to be dealing with these children, and these children also see dark angels, you need to understand dark angels. He didn't call them dark angels, he called them demons. Remember, I say dark angels because kids call them dark angels. And he said, I want you to learn about demons. I said, I don't want to learn about demons. And then he said, well, I'm a little oppositional myself. I said, I don't want to learn about demons. He said, well, you really need to learn about demons because if you're going to help these kids, then you need to understand them. And a part of understanding them is reading this book. For example, did you know you can call demons out by their names? They hate that. And I said, demons have names? And he said, yes. And they don't like it when you call them out. They like to stay hidden because they like to cause trouble. He said, I want you to remember that Satan is a fallen angel who understands the word of God better than most of us. And he said that they sit in the church to taunt God. And he said outside the church, Satan accomplishes the destruction that he wants to do to humans by harming us. Those who hate, those who destroy, those who do a lot of negative things, that's all demonic. So he said, we are made in God's image, and Satan hates that. And so that's why Satan um, does not have an appreciation for humans at all. And so this is from me to you all. Stay away from them. You know, some of you want to contact them and conjure them and deal with them. They're no good for us because they end up harming us, according to this pastor. So the books that I had to read, oh God, it's on the tip of my tongue. I just lost the name of the book. I can Google it probably before the end of this podcast, but it was all about understanding demons. And I will tell you, it's actually a good book. And one of the things that happened to me over time was that I learned so much to the point where recently I just told a kid about how to deal with some in their family home. Okay, because one came to this kid and gave the initials of their name. Hold on, I gotta write this in the blog. Hold on one second, because I'm gonna give you guys some details about this, because this gets deep. It was a demon that came to a kid, and the kid told me recently about it. But here's what was different, and it directly relates to the book that this pastor had me read. This demon told this kid its initials. I had never heard a kid tell me that before, to the point where I said, wait a minute, time out. Hold on, stop. Wait, pause. Did you just tell me the initials of a demon? And he said, yes. And I said, so you know the initials? Did it tell you its name? And he said, the initials. Oh, here's the book right here. Wait a minute. Hold on. I got the book right here. I just happened to look on my bookshelf. This is the book right here. It's by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, and it's called The Screwtape Letters. You see that? I'm showing people on Instagram. This is the book I'm talking about. This is the book that the pastor gave me. Oh my God, you got to read it. I will actually put this up on my blog for you. But it's The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. It looks scary, doesn't it? Look at the dark angel on top. So anyway, this child said to me, yes, it told me its initials. I said, but did it give you a name? And I think that this kid said yes. And I said, did you call it by his name? And he said, no. I said, if it comes to you again, call it by his name. And he said, why? I said, because they don't like that. And once you open up their identity and reveal it, I was told and I learned that they will go away because they don't want you to know them that way. Then you pray for protection. And this kid said to me, how do you pray for protection? I said, ding, 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 ding. Here we go. So I'll write down what happened with that on Friday. But that's a great example to tell you about how I learned from that pastor how to deal with demons. So I had to read the book. There are actually two books. There's another one over there, but I don't want to get up and get it. There were two that he sent to me that I had to read, but this is the main one. Now, this is what he said to me. When you decide to buy that book, he said, I want to tell you something. Satan is a very tricky character. When you buy that book, you're going to get sleepy. I said, sleepy? He said, yes. And I said, why? He said, because Satan doesn't want you to read it. You're going to get sleepy. And so I said, really? And the interesting thing about that is I actually called a cousin of mine who's a devout Christian. Yeah, I know all about those books from C.S. Lewis. They're good. And I said, really? My pastor told me to be cautious because Satan will try to put me to sleep so that I won't read it. And she said, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And you trust your family members. At least I trust mine. And so I thought, maybe I should not read this when I'm getting ready to go to bed, right? Because then the correlation would be, instead of it being demonic, it would be, well, you read the book when you were going to sleep, idiot. So that's why you fell asleep, right? Yeah. So I decided I'm going to read the book during a different time of the day so that I can stay up. I kid you not. Every single time I tried to read that book, every single time. Did you hear that? Every single time I got sleepy. And I said, oh crap. I said, I gotta find another way to read this book. And I did. I got my butt up in the morning and I started reading it. I'm sitting here looking at it. I got my butt up and I started reading it. And it's good. And it is extremely educational about these things. And it does help you understand more about demonic activity. Now, there will be people who will say, oh, you don't need to know about demons. You don't need to know this. Yes, you do. Discount that. Yes, you do. And can't be afraid of it because you need to understand it, especially if you're going to work with kids like this who actually can see this stuff. Because I'm telling you, when they see these dark things, they're seeing the spiritual realm along with these, glowing, God's angels. And you want to be very aware of what these kids can do, how they can do it, how to help them. And one of the ways is to educate yourselves, even if you're parents listening, about what these things are, what they do, and how they can harm children and us. Right? They clearly probably don't want me telling you all this stuff, but I don't care. I tell you anyway. And so, I I started talking about I was going to do a podcast and a blog about individuals that can see ghosts. And this pastor also shared with me, you should talk to the public about it. Not only has it happened numerous times and you have 1,001 stories about it, but people need to understand that there is a spiritual realm, and it doesn't stop just because you enter the church, or it doesn't stop because you start, learning about it. He said, according to the Bible, there is a spiritual realm. I talked to and consulted with other people who said, oh, yeah, there's a spiritual realm. It's all in the Bible. It's all over, upside down, sideways, in and out in the Bible. And so they've told me, it's a gift to be able to work with these kind of children. And it's a gift to all of you if you work with them. So if you are working with them, I want you to either pick up this book or a book that will truly explain to you what dark angels are out to do, what it means, and what you could do to educate yourself better about them so that you can be a force to stop these kids from interacting with these things, because that's what I do. Okay, so the learning is ongoing. It never stops. It probably will never stop. This kid just told me about initials. Haven't had that before. That's new. So now I have to learn more about that by reading books, for example, by, excuse me, C.S. Lewis. And so over time, I shared with this pastor quite a bit about the, things that I was encountering with meeting these kids, right? Because it had gotten to a point where I also had to find a way to comfort them, which is something that I talk about in blog 38, And it's because I got a lot of parents who just didn't know what to do. So he helped me try to figure out ways to comfort parents as well. And so I talk about parents here and there, but I don't specifically talk about, on the podcast, at least I haven't yet, about how you actually comfort your kids if they can see ghosts. So that leads me to blog 38. There was a parent who contacted me. So this blog 38 is actually right on time. We can kind of start it today. She contacted me and she was at her wit's end. She doesn't know what to do. Her kid is seeing ghosts. I just thought of another blog. Hold on. Sleeping disorders. Then another blog I'm going to do is about sleeping disorders based upon this kid feeling heavy. Okay. So this mom said her kid can see ghosts. And she's like, I don't know what to do about it because it's happening right when, she goes to bed. She's in her room by herself. She's seeing ghosts. They're scary. She doesn't want to deal with them, but they keep dealing with her. I don't know what to do. So the way that I'm going to conclude this podcast today is to talk to you guys about having empathy for other people that you work with or you encounter, parents in particular. All kids are afraid of seeing ghosts. Some of us are afraid of seeing ghosts, right? And so imagine if your kids can see ghosts. You don't know whether they truly can see ghosts and how that impacts them, or you don't know if it's their imagination and how it's impacting them, or if they're just flat out lying to you. So at some point, if you put yourself in the position of these parents and you don't know what to do, you will have empathy for them. So one of the best things that you could do from day one with parents, and not just parents of nebulous children, but it is to have empathy for them. You have to do that. Finding answers for parents can be very difficult. They try it on their own. A lot of them. I mean, I can tell you right now in the schools how many parents I talk to who say, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. They cry, they have sleepless nights, they're hurt. You want to acknowledge that hurt. You want to acknowledge their feelings. You want to acknowledge that, there's some confusion, that they have reservations. They're afraid. They say things like, that could be something that they may not say, such as, are my kids crazy? Right? Because they just don't know. So you don't want to be dismissive. But sometimes parents can be dismissive of their child's behaviors when it comes to their kids seeing ghosts. And I don't think they mean to do it, but it just happens. For example, some of the questions will be, is my kid just crazy? Is it all in their heads? If it's all in their heads, what do we need to do in order to stop them from thinking that they see ghosts? Or if they truly do see ghosts, what do we do about it? And how do we distinguish that from imaginary friends? And that is where we're going to stop today. We will pick up blog 38 next week. I'm starting to lose my voice, so I'm going to shut the blog down now. But if you want to chime in on this, please make sure that you join me next week. Hopefully I'll get my voice together and we'll go ahead and finish up blog 38 next week. Until then, you guys have a great night and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.